It is known as the School Choice Amendment. We'll take a look at Amendment 2, which will be on the Kentucky ballot. Plus, a discussion on school safety is held at the state capitol.
And a freeze warning goes into effect at midnight. The question is, how low will we go? I'll have the details in a few minutes.
Mountain News, first at 4, continues.
Election Day is less than 3 weeks away now. Amendment 2 on the Kentucky November ballot could impact education in the state. WYMT's Chandler Wilcox is in Redbird with a closer look at the amendment.
Amendment 2 will ask voters if they are in favor of allowing the General Assembly to fund educational institutions outside of public schools. The funding could benefit non-public and private schools throughout Kentucky, including Redbird Christian School. Redbird administrators say the funding could stabilize education they are providing in the area. Development Director Tim Crawford says the funding could also strengthen their community.
Add on to the layer where the children are living out in these remote areas, their opportunities tend to be less and less. So Redbird getting some additional funding will be able to stabilize what we're able to do so those families, it will stay and those families will be able to have their students at Redbird School.
Crawford says the school allows students to flourish when they may not be able to at a public school. There are also folks with public school systems that are against Amendment 2, saying that would take funding away from them. In Clay County, Chandler Wilcox, WYMT Mountain News.
Perry County educator Tiffany Combs says funding was already previously cut from their public school system. Coming up at 6, we'll take a closer look at the opinions of both those supporting and not supporting the amendment. Kentucky lawmakers were given an update on school safety today. Kentucky's Director of School Safety says funding has increased drastically since their center started in 1999 after the Heath High School shooting in Paducah. And more of that is going into mental health treatment. WYMT's Phil Pendleton has more on what a committee heard at the state capitol.
Montgomery County's SRO schools chief told Kentucky lawmakers today that his role as an SRO is three-tiered, basically to be law enforcement, to be a teacher, and a counselor. But he says the #1 goal is to create a positive culture within schools.
Our district, thankfully, was able to double the size of our police department.
Chris Berrier directs law enforcement for Montgomery County Schools, which dealt with a rash of school threats and even a student who brought a loaded gun to McNabb Middle School. But he says he feels the schools there are safer now because of addressing priorities and taking a stronger look at safety. That was the point of today's budget subcommittee on education, where Center for School Safety Director John Akers says funding has increased from $2 million 25 years ago to $15 million now. A lot of that goes into hiring SROs, but mental health treatment has also become a big factor. Berrier cited an example of relationship building.
And when I mean long term, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this kid was a middle school age student as an offender, and now he's a 25-year-old man with a family, and we're hugging at the meat counter at the Kroger. And I think that guys like that's really the goal. That's the end game for us.
There are more than 800 school resource officers in various schools across the state of Kentucky. And John Akers with the Center for School Safety said that number is expected to be more than 900 next year. In Frankfort, Phil Pendleton, now back to you.
John Akers says the formula for school safety funding includes a base dollar amount of $20,000 per school, plus an additional $15 per student. Tomorrow will mark 45 years since President Jimmy Carter signed legislation creating the Department of Education. The department began operating a few months later after the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare was split into the Department of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services. The Department of Education has under 5,000 employees, making it the smallest staff of the cabinet agencies. Adolescents treated for obesity with GLP-1 drugs had a lower risk of being suicidal. Researchers in a new study looked at 7,000 kids between the ages of 12 and 18 who received semaglutide or liraglutide. After a year, the kids had a 33% lower risk of having suicidal thoughts compared to kids treated with behavioral interventions. The GLP-1 drug semaglutide is better known by its commercial names Ozempic and Wegovy.
Well, we had a chilly day across eastern Kentucky with temperatures in the 40s and 50s. We will drop into the upper 20s and low 30s on the high end, and because of that, we have this, a freeze warning in effect beginning at midnight and going until 10 o'clock Thursday morning for almost everybody in the WYMT viewing area. A few exceptions to the rule there, but again, the majority of us under that freeze warning. Outside right now, we're seeing a mixture of sun and clouds. Temperatures are in the 40s and 50s. 49 is the current temperature in Grundy. 47 Clintwood. Wise is at 45. Otherwise 50s from Pikeville to Irvin, down to Somerset, Monticello, back down towards the Jacksboro area. Somerset's the warm spot on the map right now at 57 degrees. And we take a look at the next several hours as we go into the 7 o'clock time frame. We'll keep the cloud cover and play with temperatures in the 40s. Then we start to drop. Look at midnight. We're in the 30s and 40s. Then by the time we get to about the 5, 6, 7 o'clock time frame, there you go. Upper 20s and low 30s for the low end. So definitely have the coat with you as you're heading out the door tomorrow. All is quiet on live pinpoint Doppler radar. And the good news is this is going to get a break. Over the next several days, we'll see plenty of sunshine in the forecast, and with the sunshine comes a warming trend, and I'll talk more about that in the First Alert forecast in a few minutes. Steve.
All right, Eric, thank you. Disney unveiled a new all-access skip the line plan at its U.S. parks that can cost more than the park ticket does. Lightning Lane Premier Pass is being offered in limited quantities. A pass will be priced per person per day based on date and demand. It can range from $137 to $478 after tax at Walt Disney World Resort and $400 per person per day at Disneyland Resort. Now, those prices are on top of the cost of the ticket to get into the theme parks. Apple unveiled a new iPad mini built for Apple Intelligence. The new Mini's chip is the same one used in the iPhone 15 Pro and will support the company's forthcoming AI features. The device has double the memory of its predecessor, released 3 years ago, and adds support for Apple Pencil Pro. Prices start at $499. Apple is now taking pre-orders. The new Mini hits stores October 23rd. PepsiCo is reversing course on shrinkflation. The company will put more chips in some Tostitos and Ruffles bags to bring back customers who are fed up with higher prices and skimpier bags. These new bonus bags will contain 20% more chips for the same prices as standard bags in select locations. The company is the largest manufacturer of salty snacks in the U.S. It's seen a sales decline as prices have gone up. Family, friends, and political leaders gathered in Washington to pay tribute to Ethel Kennedy. President Joe Biden, former President Barack Obama, and former President Bill Clinton were among those celebrating the life of the widow of Robert F. Kennedy during a memorial service at the Cathedral of St. Matthew. The leaders and family members shared fond memories of the longtime human rights advocate and Kennedy matriarch.
If you met my mother, you couldn't help but fall under her spell. And that's because my mother loved people. She believed in people, in everyone's innate potential.
We live at a time of such rancor and division. What better time then to remember the life that Ethel Kennedy lived? A woman who understood that our salvation comes from turning towards each other, not turning away.
Ethel Kennedy raised 11 children she shared with husband Robert F. Kennedy, who was assassinated in 1968. She died last Thursday of complications from a stroke at the age of 96. Coming up on First at 4, one grocery store chain is offering a Thanksgiving meal at the lowest price since the pandemic. The details on what they are calling the inflation-busting holiday meal deal.
And we are first alerting you to a freeze warning, which begins at midnight. Record-breaking lows are likely, and then a weekend warm-up. Details in a few minutes.